Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest team preview video. I am going to be doing the Tennessee Titans today. Just in case we have any first-time listeners, what you can expect is I'm going to share my thoughts and my feelings on Coach Mike Vrabel of the Tennessee Titans. Then I'm going to take a look at the remaining cap space, see if they have any room to work with prior to the season to make any more additions or give out any contract extensions. Take a look at players entering their contract year that have been on the team for the last couple to three, however long they've been on the team. Recent guys have been on the team for a while. Nobody on like 1 year deals, basically. Then I take a look at the offense. I take a look at the defense. At the end of the episode, I share my thoughts on how I feel this overall team can perform this year. And then when I am going over the offense, I do kind of give it a fantasy football perspective, just in case I have some people from my past, from the fantasy shows I've done over the last few years that like to count on that information too. So I try to blend everything I like to do together, reviewing rosters, scouting players, and giving fantasy football advice. So let's just go ahead and dive into this. Mike Vrabel is entering, I want to say, his fourth year as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. He's done a great job ever since he's came over from Houston when he was down there as a defensive coordinator. He's helped turn around this program from being basically a middle of the pack team that they were prior to him joining, and now they won the division, I believe, 2 years. Wait, Houston might have won it the year before, but they're basically been in the playoffs ever since he's been joined the Tennessee Titans. So you gotta like his mind. You gotta like how he coaches his players. It seems like he's definitely a player's coach, where they not only have the respect for him and they'll listen to his leadership and whatever comes out of his mouth, but they also enjoy him enough where they probably don't mind going to the bar and having a beer with him after a long practice day or after a grueling game day on the flight home. So I think he's one heck of a coach. Obviously, you want to see if he could take this team to the next level. They got to the AFC Conference Championship game, I believe, 2 years ago, and then last year they fell short in the divisional round. Oh, actually, they actually lost during the wild card weekend to the Ravens. So now what you're kind of looking for the next step out of Coach Vrabel is to take this team on a deep postseason run and see if they can finally crack into the Super Bowl. And obviously they have that type of expectation this year with the addition of Julio Jones in that trade. They definitely understand that their window is not that large, especially when you're counting on Derrick Henry, who at some point you would think his production will start to drop off as he gets older at that running back position. And then we'll see how long Ryan Tannehill can continue his great play at the quarterback position. And Julio's up there in age. The defense, you kind of are figuring that out as well. So I feel like if there's a chance for them to get to the Super Bowl, they better get it done probably this year, if not by next year. But let's just keep it moving then. Taking a look at the remaining cap space, they are sitting around $8.2 million, so that's plenty of room to work with if they wanted to go acquire anybody off the market, if they wanted to make a trade for anybody that's within that salary cap range, if they wanted to rent a player for a year, or if they even wanted to maybe give out a little pay raise, maybe work on an extension on one of these players. That's something they could consider. Rashaan Evans, that's the one I don't get at all. I was really high on Rashaan when he came into his draft class. I think he was my linebacker 4 in that class. He's played really good for Tennessee over the last 3 years. He's gotten better every year. His development has continued. And the shocking thing is they declined his 5th-year option. I don't understand why they did. And then I heard they were supposedly they wanted to do that, and then they also wanted to work on a contract extension for him. Well, I hope they get it done for him for his sakes, and he gets properly paid. But they better hopefully get this done too, because they don't want this to turn into a Jack Conklin situation. If anybody forgets, Jack Conklin got his 5th-year option declined by Tennessee, and then he ended up leaving in free agency after that year, and then he went to the Browns last year, and look at he end up being the player they wanted him to be. So I don't understand why they would make that mistake twice. So Rashaan Evans is the guy to see. Maybe they can work anything out prior to the season. Other than that, there could be a very good linebacker on the open market at the end of the year. Jaylen Brown's a very solid linebacker too, so it'll be interesting to see if they can get something worked out with him possibly. Those two make a pretty solid linebacker tandem. Harold Landry, I really like. He's more of a situation pass rusher. He's a guy that can get after the quarterback. You just want to see a consistent in his play. It seems like he kind of has his weeks where he disappears. But if he could put together a strong season, I would not be surprised if they work a contract with him at the end of the year. They probably want to see how he performs this year before offering him the money. Then Ben Jones is their starting center right now, but they probably maybe have somebody they have in mind they're grooming for his potential replacement, or they can go look on the open market or just offer him a contract at the end of the year. But either way, they have some room to work with, either to give Rashaan Evans a contract extension, or maybe look to acquire to add more pieces to this roster, because this roster could use some more depth in a lot of areas, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and keep it moving to the offensive preview. These are the projected starters per Devin Jackson. Give Devin a follow at RealD_Jackson, up and coming guy. Congratulations on his new gig down there in New Orleans that he's going to be going down to. So again, congratulations to Devin. Go give him a follow. He's a great content creator, and he's a great dude. So make sure to go give him a follow. These are pulled from the Prospect Encyclopedia. That'll be coming out here shortly. I think I'll be getting details about that tonight. I'll be promoting that on Jake Ellenbogen's channel at some point tonight. Stay tuned to my social media channels for posting about that. And then one last thing about the Prospect Encyclopedia. If you're seeing any stars in any of my videos next to these names, what that means is they are inside the Prospect Encyclopedia, and in order to make Tennessee's top 22 list, you have to be from the last 3 NFL draft classes. You cannot have more than 12 regular season starts. So these are guys that are still gaining NFL experience. They range anywhere from future superstars of the league to core special teamers of the league. So let's just keep it moving though. Ryan Tannehill, the start at the quarterback position. Ryan Tannehill has been one of the better, if not best not the best, but one of the best quarterbacks in the league ever since he took over the job for Marcus Mariota, and he's helped lead the Tennessee Titans to a playoff run over the last couple of years. And taking a look at his stats of how productive he's been, here's one good thing he's got on a little streak going on. As of right now, he'll enter the season on the 4th longest active streak with at least 1 passing touchdown in a game. He has 13 games in a row of doing that. And then here's some other stats I collected from the last 3 seasons. He's actually got the most comebacks. He's tied for the most game-winning drives, so he's got proven success that he can put the team on his back and help lead them to victories. He's got the 4th best passer rating, the 4th most yards per attempt, and the 6th most rushing touchdowns. So he's just been very good over this last year. It's so surprising after what we saw in Miami. Everybody, including myself, thought his career was basically over, and he was going to revert to being a career backup. But then he got that opportunity to take over Marcus Mariota, and he hasn't looked back since. He's been one of the better players at the position, and he's a leader on that team, and he should probably have another strong year, because with the addition of Julio Jones, that's going to make life easier on him. He's still got the up-and-coming A.J. Brown on the team, and then at the end of the day, when you can just hand the ball off to big old Derrick Henry, that makes life easy too, or you can work in those play-action passes like they do there in Tennessee. As far as like Brian as a fantasy quarterback, he is just like he is a plug and play guy, right? So like he's not like, he doesn't have like a super high ceiling as a fantasy quarterback, but he's got a super high floor. He's about as safe as a fantasy quarterback you can draft this year. And if you want to, he's a guy that maybe if you do draft, maybe you take a chance on a Trey Lance at the back end of the drafts. And you kind of wait till Trey Lance comes in, because he does kind of potentially have a higher ceiling because of the offense he's in. But Ryan, I think at the end of the day, you probably could use him for your whole fantasy football schedule outside his bye week. So yeah, I can understand using Ryan as your fantasy quarterback, because he's just got that high floor. And then he's just an overall solid guy right now at this point of his career. And then moving on to the beast himself, Derrick Henry at the running back position. Derrick Henry has been completely dominant on the ground. He's got unbelievable size, and just for his size, he's got great speed. At any given moment, he can cut into a crease, cut into a lane, and take off for a 70-yard touchdown. He's going to run you over. He can outrun you. He can stiff arm you to the ground. And he's just a guy that I pray one day, if there's ever zombies in this world, I don't ever want to come across a Derrick Henry zombie. I've told that to friends before, because he's just he's an alien. That's what he is. The guy's unbelievable. And to get a look at how dominant this dude is right now, let's take a look at my stats I pulled since 2018. Now, this isn't necessarily since a 2018 stat, the first one I'm going to go over, but Derrick Henry could potentially set history this year. He's currently on the longest active streak of having at least 50 rushing yards in a game. He's got 25 games in a row of getting at least 50 rushing yards. And Priest Holmes, if you remember that name from the early 2000s, late 90s, he's actually owns that record. He has 38 games in a row. So if Derrick Henry, these first 14 games, if he can come out and get those 50 yards a game, that's going to be Derrick Henry's record, and I think he's going to get that, because he's going to dominate the touches out of this backfield. The only thing that's going to stop that is if he does have to deal with an injury. But I mean, history says I don't think that's going to happen, because he's been getting how many carries since his high school days, and that has yet to happen. Now, taking a look at stats since 2018, he's the only player with 2 seasons of 1,700 plus scrimmage yards and 15 plus touchdowns. The guy is, like I keep on saying, the guy's been dominant. And then kind of going over these stats really quick, since 2018, he's got the most rushing yards per game. He's got the most rushing yards. He's got the most total touchdowns among all players. He's got the most rushing touchdowns. He's got the second most rushing yards per attempt. He's got the second most scrimmage yards. And in terms of fantasy, he's got the 7th most fantasy football points per game. So that's where I'm going to kind of make the switch to on Derrick. He's been as dominant as he has been. His only problem, when you look at this is why those people that argue against PPR, their case is Derrick Henry, because as great as he has been, as good as he's almost averaging 100 yards a game. But then you look at his fantasy points per game, and that is per PPR. He only averages 7th most per game on a per game average. So that's my problem with Derrick. It's like, hey, if it's a standard fantasy football league, Derrick Henry has a strong case to be the number 1 pick. But then when you play in PPR leagues, because he's not getting that much work in the passing attack, even though he's taken screens for 70-yard touchdowns before, I don't understand why they don't use him more in that aspect of the game. He doesn't get that average up. So that's why you see guys like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and all those guys, even if it's like Dalvin Cook, like a slightly bigger role in his team's screen game. That's why he's kind of has more value in fantasy. So, but with that being said, I think Derrick's about as safe as a player at the running back position you can draft in fantasy. He's a high floor running back. You know what you can expect. And then he's got proven success when you get to that back end of the schedule. How many teams have I seen, everybody has seen him carry throughout the playoffs? Because that's when he usually starts to get dominant and getting those 200, plus yard rushing games. So I think he's just a safe player to draft. Am I drafted him above those guys that have a higher ceiling because of their receiving ability? Probably not. But if I'm sitting there between pick 4 to 8 and he falls to me, more than likely I'm probably going to take him, depending on who's on the board at that time. Now let's take a look at their wide receivers. They have a really good. Now with the addition. Now there was a big concern about this wide receiver group prior to the Julio Jones addition, because they have guys that lack experience. They have guys that lack a lot of talent. But anytime you add Julio Jones to the lineup, it's good. So they're not only just counting on A.J. Brown this year. Speaking of A.J. Brown, let's just start with him really quick. A.J. Brown is going to have a great year. Yes, they added Julio, but look at what Calvin Ridley did with Julio last year. He blew up. A.J. Brown, I'm going to say it, you guys have heard this before, he is entering year 3. So he's about to have a uptick in production, and he's going to take the next step in his career, and I think he's going to have a very strong season for the Tennessee Titans. Now, here's a stat on AJ since 2018. Now, keep in mind, obviously, he's only played in 2 seasons, so his name didn't pop up much in my stat collection this summer, but he did pop up in one. He has the fourth most yards per reception since 2018. He's averages about 17.4 yards per reception. So that's what we've always been asking for AJ is we just want to see more targets, have him involved in the passing game, because when he gets the ball in his hands, he's almost getting basically 18 yards a catch. So that's all I want to see out of him. Have more opportunities to have the ball in his hands, and then I think it's going to be amazing for him to have Julio on the other side, because teams can't just only concentrate on AJ this year. So I think he's going to have a big year. He's a guy I'm looking to draft in that second or third round. Probably more of like a third or fourth round pick to me, because I might try to go get running backs in those first couple rounds. And then taking a look at Julio, it's Julio. He's a Hall of Fame talent. He's a Hall of Fame player. The guy's completely dominant at his position. Yeah, he's dealt with injuries over the last couple of years, but when he's on the field, he's so hard to stop, even when he is kind of banged up. Now, let's take a look at Julio since 2018. He's actually currently tied for the third longest active streak with having at least one reception in the game. He's got 127 games in a row of at least one reception. So you can at least count on him getting one catch, but he's going to get more than that anytime he plays. He's got the most receiving yards per game at 96.1. He's got the second most receiving yards. He's got the sixth most fantasy football points per game, and he's got the seventh most receptions. So it's Julio. Even though like people kind of been like, oh, he hasn't been the same over the last 3 years. Well, what are you talking about? He's averaging the most receiving yards per game. So yeah, Julio's another guy I think that's dropping because of his age, because of the new location. And if you get him in that third or fourth round range, great. You're going to get a guy that can give you wide receiver one numbers. Both those guys, AJ Brown and Julio Jones, they're both like basically wide receiver twos right now in fantasy football. They can give you wide receiver one numbers on any given week. And if those two weren't on the same team, you can probably draft them as a wide receiver one on your team. And depending on how your draft falls, you might be doing that anyways. But I have high expectations for them to both have a strong year. They can both prove that they are the top wide receiver tandem in this league. And Julio's just going to add another element to this offense. Him and A.J. Brown are going to be able to open up rushing lanes for Derrick Henry. There's a variety of ways they can attack opposing defenses this year. And then Josh Reynolds I think is a very underrated guy that from the Rams I've always kind of liked. He just never saw a big opportunity to prove that he can have a bigger role in that Rams offense because of how many wide receivers they've had over the years. But I think he can be a nice little slot receiver that can play off of Julio and play off of A.J. Brown and find himself open more times than not. Definitely not a fantasy guy, but I think he's going to benefit this offense working inside the slot. And then, but I will say this though, if anything happens to A.J. or Julio, I do have my worries with this offense becoming at least their passing attack potentially becoming inconsistent because the guys behind them don't have that necessary experience you would like to see. Fitzpatrick, is it Fitzpatrick? I say that wrong, probably right. I think I probably did. The guy from Louisville. Des Fitzpatrick is a guy to watch potentially, but we'll have to see if that situation comes down to it. And then taking a look at their tight end, Devon's got Anthony Fursker as the starting tight end. They also brought in Jeff Swaim. So we'll have to see how the situation plays off. Fursker has been a guy that has been sneakily productive for Tennessee behind, why am I drawing a blank? The guy that went to New England. Anyways, he's been productive over the last couple of years. He's more of a touchdown dependent tight end. I don't think I'm actively trying to draft him in fantasy just because I don't think he's going to be a week in and week out play, and you want to try to find that guy that's going to have a consistent target load. But overall, he's just a solid tight end for their offense. Now, taking a look at their offensive line, it should be a lot better now this year because Taylor Lewan will be returning from his torn ACL. So obviously you got to bet on him being fully healthy. Him and Roger Saffold make a very strong left tackle, left guard punch. Ben Jones is solid as a center. They drafted Dylan Reynolds in the second round of the draft this year. I think he's got a really good talent at the tackle position. So if he could deliver as a rookie, I like their bookend tackle situation. And Nate Davis is an all right guard. We'll see if as long as his plays up to par. This should be a very strong offensive line for Derek and for Ryan this year. Overall, this is an offense that should be no worse than they were last year. They actually should be better than what they were last year with the addition of Julio Jones. He's an upgrade over Corey Davis. So this is an offense that, as long as everything's clicking, they're not missing any of these key cogs to the offense. They're an offense that can be a top 10 offense this year. I don't see anything setting them back outside of injuries in 2021. And then if you want to keep it moving to the defense, again, these are the projected starters pulled out of the Prospect Encyclopedia. This is per Devin Jackson. Again, go give Devin a follow on Twitter at @RealD_Jackson. And let's take a look at their defense. I'm gonna start as I've always done. I'm gonna start from the inside out. Starting with their defensive front, they got some bullies up front. Jeffrey Simmons, I can't believe he fell to them when he did in the draft. He's an absolute dominant tight end, defensive tackle. He's a space eater. He's a bull. He will toss linemen to the side. He can end plays in a second. So I think he's going to have a very strong year. This is a guy that can put together an all-pro type of season for Tennessee, especially when he's working next to Denico Autry. Denico Autry, he can be lined up inside, he can be lined up at outside. He's a very effective pass rusher, no matter where he is lined up, and I think he's going to benefit this defensive front, and I think he's going to help make life easier on Jeffrey Simmons, which can help him put up that all-pro type of year this year, which I think he can do. Now, those two guys are going to eat up space in the middle of the defense and eat up presence of the offensive line. So that what that's going to open up for is like a Harold Landry I mentioned earlier. I want to see a consistent play out of him this year, and if he can, he's a guy that can rack up sacks and get the double-digit sacks. And this year, I believe, because of his talent, he's been in the league for at least 3 years now, so he should be able to take his next step in his development, especially if he wants a major payday after this season. And then opposite of him, they brought in Bud Dupree from the Steelers. Now, we'll have to see how Bud Dupree looks. He is coming off a torn ACL, but that didn't stop Tennessee from giving him a lot of money. And here's a stat that pulled up on Bud, is he's actually one of 7 players with a season of 67 plus tackles, 13 plus tackles for a loss, 16 plus quarterback hits, and 9 plus sacks since 2018. So I think the addition of Bud Dupree to go with Jeffrey Simmons and Denico Autry, when it's passing situations, those guys are freaking bullies, and they're going to bull rush the quarterback. Harold Landry's got the athleticism to come off the edge as well. So I like their ability to create pressure against the quarterback, and all those guys are going to be very solid against the run. And then Rashaan Evans and Jayon Brown are a very strong linebacker tandem. I already kind of talked them both up earlier. Jayon Brown is just a very solid linebacker. Rashaan Evans has been continuing his development every year, and I think he's going to take that next step. He's got great speed, and he can be used in pass rushing situations on blitz packages as well. So that front 7 for Tennessee is really solid. You gotta like what they're going to bring this year. They're going to be tough against the run, and they can create the pressure. Now, where you kind of start to get your concerns, even though it's not that big of a concern if these guys can hit on their talent, is their secondary. I'll talk up Kevin Byrd. He's been one of the best safeties over the last 5 years. He's a ball hawk. He can create those interceptions, and he's going to have to be the leader of this secondary. He's going to have to make sure these young cats are ready to play and they're in the right position, so opposing quarterbacks are not picking them apart throughout the year. So he's going to have to need a big year from him as a veteran, even if it's not leading to a lot of interceptions, just to be that veteran presence, the guy that can coach up these young guys and make sure they're like I just mentioned, they're in the right position to succeed. And then Amani Hooker, well, he's been getting some snaps underneath his belt, and he's developing as a good safety in the league. But he's still like you see these stars next to these guys secondary. They don't have more than 12 regular season starts entering the year, so this is a very inexperienced group. And that's why I'm saying like Kevin's got to be the guy to have these guys ready now. Before I dive into these younger guys, they also did sign Janoris Jenkins from the Saints. So that's another veteran that can help coach up the group. And here's a stat on Janoris. He's tied for the second most pass deflection since 2018 at 43. Now Devon's got the younger guys projected as their starters, which I think that will be at some point of this year. Now I know Caleb Farley's kind of working his way from that back injury. I'm not quite sure where he is, so Janoris might actually be like an opening day starter. But I know the coaching staff is going to want that group to be the starters, because they're going to be their starting group of the future. And so let's speak about that. Yeah, Caleb Farley was one of the best cornerbacks in this past draft class. He's got great length, great size, great coverage ability. You just want to see him be fully healthy and also see where he is, because he was one of those players that opted out last year. So we just got to see where he is with his play when he starts to play real football again. Now, the opposite guy of him is Christian Fulton. Christian Fulton showed some really good things as a rookie when he was on the field. He dealt with some injuries throughout the year, but I am super high on Christian Fulton. He was my cornerback 2 for me behind Jeff Okudah in his class last year. I think he can be a all-pro type of cornerback in this league. So if Caleb Farley and Christian Fulton can deliver on their talents this year, I mean, they can eventually form one of the better cornerback tandems in the league. And then you're talking about where if they grow into their talent by year 2, year 3, it's going to be one of the best cornerback tandems in the league, and that's going to really benefit that pass rush up there in the front 7 of Tennessee. And then Elijah Molden, he's got the talent to form himself into one of the best. He could be like a top 10 nickelback by year 3 if he shows his development as he gets the nuances of the game at this level. So I think they got a lot of potential in that secondary, but you just got your concerns that maybe these guys are young, they're going to have their lapses against really good veteran wide receivers, and there may be some times they get picked apart in the air, but they have the benefit where if the defensive front 7 can develop that consistent pass rush on the quarterback, that they don't have to be perfect on every drive. So and they have enough talent to create those turnovers as well. But overall, I mean, I'll be quite honest, when I started looking at this defense, it was better than I thought. I thought I was going to pick apart this defense. I thought, because of how many people we saw leave the team, I thought I was not going to like this defense, but I actually really do. I really like their front 7 because I think they can be really stout against the run, and they can be creative to create pressure. And I really like the potential of that secondary as long as all those young guys can hit on their talent. Now, my biggest concern with this defense is I think they really lack depth. Rashad Weaver is going to be a guy that also works in this rotation to create pressure on passing situations. Laurel Murchison's all right. So I guess I like their defensive front, but I don't really like their linebacker depth. And then outside of Janoris Jenkins, I really don't like their safety or their cornerback depth. So if guys start to have to miss time in that back end of the defense, that can make leaky holes that really good quarterbacks are going to be able to pick them apart and get good chunk plays. And then they're just going to negate the passing, the edge rushers, because they're just going to get the ball out of their hands easily at a quick rate. So that's my biggest concern with Tennessee's defense is their depth. But overall for this Tennessee team, they got a good overall solid team. It is a little bit of a top-heavy roster where if they had to start relying on their depth, things could get ugly pretty fast for the Titans. But overall, I think they got an offense where as long as they got Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Julio, AJ Brown in the lineup, that's an offense that can develop into a top 10 offense throughout the year. And then their defense, people got to give them more credit. I personally, I would not really like it, but They got a very stout front seven that can be strong against the run. They can create pressure with guys like Harold Landry, Rashad Reaver, and Danico Autry, and they can send Rashaan Evans on blitz packages as well. And then they got a secondary where if Kevin Byrd can be that leader and get those young guys like Christian Fulton, Caleb Farley, and Elijah Molden ready to go, that can be a potentially good, very sneaky, solid secondary this year that can help create turnovers. So it's just an overall good, solid team. I think they're more likely going to finish anywhere between that 9-8 to 11-6, maybe 12-5 record. They probably are. They had the best chance to win the AFC South because they have a solid guy at the quarterback position with Ryan Tannehill. So their advantage over the Colts right now is they know who they got in Ryan Tannehill. The Colts don't know who they have in Carson Wentz. So that's why you got to slightly lean towards the Titans potentially more likely winning this division. But it will come down to how they match with the Colts in those matchups whenever they face off each other throughout the season. But overall, I expect them to make the playoffs again this year, whether it is as the AFC South winner or whether it is as a wild card. And then we'll see if Coach Vrabel can take them on a deep postseason run. They definitely got the explosive playmaking ability with Derrick Henry, Julio, and AJ. So we'll see if they can get the job done. Other than that, thank you guys for tuning into today's video. As always, I appreciate anybody that watches my videos and consumes my content. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that like button. If you haven't not yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. And then stay tuned for any announcements on my social media that I mentioned earlier. I believe tonight, this is Tuesday. What is today? August 17th. So around maybe I think like 9 p.m. Eastern tonight, I think I'm doing a Prospect Encyclopedia type of show on Jake Ellenbogen's show with everybody that did the book. So stay tuned for my announcement on that. Other than that, the next team I will be doing is the Seattle Seahawks. I'll be doing that at some point tomorrow. So I'll see you guys then and enjoy your day.